Gyarados is coming to Pokemon Unite in just a few days, and there he is right there with Magikarp. Magikarp right along with it, and here's everything you need to know about our newest all-rounder coming to Eos Island. First, hi, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, I'm so unbelievably excited for this release, even though I am very, very worried about how this is going to go. Let's get into one of the biggest weird things about this Pokemon, and that it starts as Magikarp. Magikarp is pretty terrible, and it's not super easy to get out of being Magikarp. It was easier on the public test server, and they actually have nerfed it pre-release. So there's a lot to talk about becoming Gyarados and filling up your effort gauge. Your effort gauge and your passive for Magikarp is tied together. First off, Magikarp gets a little extra movement speed every time it's hit by an enemy Pokemon. This stacks up to 5 times. But really what you're getting with Magikarp is this effort gauge that you need to figure out how to fill, and you do that in a few ways. The ways you fill your effort gauge are as follows. Getting an assist or a KO on an opposing Pokemon. This can be quite difficult because Magikarp is not going to be very powerful. However, you get a huge bonus for getting a KO, and I'll talk about exact values here soon. Scoring any type of a goal under 10 points, as well as a larger bonus for scoring a goal over 10 points. You also fill your effort gauge by using your moves, Flail, and Splash. You get more of an effort gauge fill if you actually do damage with Flail and hitting auto attacks. You get no additional bonus for securing last hits on wild Pokemon. Unlike the public test server, you no longer can have a level 15 Magikarp bouncing around like you can see in this video. You now force Magikarp's evolution at level 7. So even if you or an ally is quite a bit behind and you're not filling your effort gauge, you still are forced into Gyarados at level 7. So if you want to evolve before level 7, and trust me, you want to evolve before level 7, you need to get 10,000 effort points. And I will kind of break down what this looks like for you right now. Big shout outs to everyone who data mines all of this stuff so that they can figure it out. I'm getting this information from iAnt. If you do an auto attack, you get 20 to your effort gauge. If you hit with an auto attack, you get plus 100 to that. Using Splash is 50, using Flail is 50. However, if you hit with it, you get an additional 150. Really, really small bonuses. If you score a goal under 10, you get 400 effort points. Now, here is where it gets kind of somewhat reasonable, and I think there's a lot of strategy around this. If you get an assist on a KO, you get 2,000 points. That is massive. It's going to fill a fifth of your gauge. If you get a KO on an opponent, that's 4,000 points. If somehow you're able to pick up an early KO with Magikarp, you're going to be in a great spot. Now, here's a tricky one, and this actually might be one of the tricks to getting a Gyarados way earlier than people would expect. If you score a goal 10 points or over, you get 1,500 effort points. Now, of course, once Gyarados comes out, I'm going to make a guide as to exactly how to evolve this thing as quickly as possible. Having a good lane ally, having, EXP share, all of these things are going to help you. Having good last hitting for your team, maybe just getting to 7 is the best way to go. But I actually think there's going to be a lot of strategy around making sure that you can get an assist or even possibly a miracle KO. But the big thing here, I think, is going to be scoring goals worth 10 points, like right at 10 or 11 points, getting quick dunks on the enemy that they wouldn't expect, and filling your gauge very, very quickly. Once you do that, you will be able to evolve. Before that, you will be Magikarp. Carp. It's going to be a tough ride for us Carp mains out there, but I'm ready for it. Let's really quickly talk about the 2 moves that you're going to have as Magikarp. You're going to have Flail and you're going to have Splash. Splash really doesn't do anything at all except you jump into a designated direction, you get 3 uses of it, and that's it. One interesting thing about Splash, and this may be a strategy for Gyarados, is that Splash will proc your Razor Claw, so you will be able to use Splash and do extra damage with your autos after that. This might be a nice way to pick up some sneaky KOs or last hits on wild Pokemon. In general, it's just a very, very pitiful dash. Flail, on the other hand, is actually a lot better. Flail is a short-range move where you flail about dealing damage to opponents, and you actually deal more damage the lower your HP is with this, and it scales pretty well off of your attack. An early game for Magikarp could be just really inting a lot for scores and stacks and trying to flail and pick up assists and KOs. I honestly could see this being a strategy for this Pokemon. It's going to stay relatively low leveled and kind of useless for a while, so you might unfortunately be throwing yourselves at opponents, jumping at them with your splash, hoping to get Gyarados as soon as you can. Once you do, once you hit either level 7 or that effort gauge is filled, you are now Gyarados. Let's talk about Gyarados. Real quick, I have to say, when I said let's talk about Gyarados, my brain went, we don't talk about Gyarados. Hi, I have a 5-year-old daughter and we listen to Frozen and Encanto all day. Moving on. Gyarados gets a passive change once it evolves, and that turns into Moxie from Rattled. Moxie is going to give you a 30% cooldown on all of your moves if you get an assist or a KO. So Gyarados will have the ability to kind of snowball in a fight a little bit better. The more KOs it gets, the easier it will be to continue to get those KOs by refreshing your moves. You also get a 12% max HP increase once you evolve. You get 100 extra attack stat and a 40% base attack speed increase. So yeah, becoming Gyarados is kind of like a big deal. You do get a boosted attack with every third attack now with Gyarados, which you never got with Magikarp, and that's going to do extra damage. Once you evolve into Gyarados, you get both of your moves right away, so you don't have to wait for any other level. It's just as soon as you hit Gyarados, if you hit Gyarados at level 5, you get both of your moves immediately, which could be obviously massive. Let's start talking about a few of these moves right now. Your first option is either between Dragon Breath or Aqua Tail. Dragon Breath is basically set up as your attack speed steroid move. You're going to breathe out some Dragon Breath in front of you, and the more enemies you hit with it, the bigger basic attack speed increase you get, up to 100% if you hit 3 enemies. This move will paralyze your opponents as well, which slows them and slows their attack speed, and at the same time, it's going to increase the damage of your basic attacks. This kind of feels like a different version, sort of what Meowscarada has going on with Trailblaze, or what Zacian has going on with Metal Claw. It's just a crazy attack speed steroid that's going to make you attack very, very fast. The plus version of this will increase the damage this move naturally does, as well as increase the damage for your basic attacks. This is possibly going to be very powerful, but I would say it's not the most exciting way to play a Pokemon in my opinion. It's just a button presses very fast. You're going to hit the enemies with a ton of auto attacks and do huge amounts of damage. Your next option I think is a little more interesting, and that is Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to have you essentially be stationary. You kind of move forward a little bit and you're going to swing your tail and try to hit multiple enemies with it. The more enemies you hit with this, or the more times you hit with this move, I should say, you're going to charge up a bonus big boosted tail swipe with Aqua Tail. Again, if you do hit those 3 times with this move and you get this big boosted swipe, it is actually a massive amount of damage in a huge area. You can charge this move up as well to deal more damage. This does almost 400% of your attack stat with this move. So stacking things like an attack weight or having a weakness policy could make this thing an absolutely devastating move to hit your opponents. However, it can be a little tricky because Gyarados unfortunately can be stunned out of this move in a lot of different ways. It's obviously very powerful, so it gives your opponents abilities to stop you from basically charging up all of your stacks with it, essentially, to get that big boosted attack. Things like a Trevenant coming on in there with a Wood Hammer is really going to ruin your day. Also, once this move upgrades, it gets an execute function, so you now are able to do more damage based on missing opponent Pokemon HP. Really, if you can set this up in a big fight and hit some opponents, you could get a multi-enemy KO with one of your moves. But it's tricky to set up, and you're going to have to really work on your positioning. Your next 2 moves are Waterfall and Bounce, and these are both essentially mobility moves inside the game. Bounce, interestingly enough, has been buffed since the PTS. We're not sure exactly what state it's going to release in, but right now it actually was buffed from the trial. Waterfall is staying the same. I personally enjoyed Waterfall a little more just because I think it's more interesting. Let's talk about the 2 really quick. Waterfall is basically a dash move that moves 3 times, where you can change the direction each time you move, and each time you hit an opponent with it, depending on which stage of the dash you are in, it has a slightly different effect. The first hit is going to deal some damage. The second hit of this is actually going to give you a shield, which could be amazing for engaging in some of these fights. And then the third hit is going to knock your opponents up, or throw them, as the game calls it. The upgrade to this move isn't super exciting, but it's nice nonetheless, which is giving you a 1-second cooldown to this move. I actually really like the positioning of this move, and I think you can get some pretty incredible distance with it, while at the same time, again, giving you that shield and giving you the ability to knock up your opponents and set up a big fight. Now, bounce, I think, could be really powerful, especially after the buffs they gave it, which is going to give you a bigger shield when you use it. With bounce, you are stationary and you charge this move up and you set the ability to sort of jump in on your opponents. If you charge for a set amount of time, you get a big chunky shield when you jump in, and you're going to lower the move speed of your opponents. So this is another setup to get near your opponents and set up a nice big ambush so that you can hopefully pick up some big KOs. Both dash moves for this Pokemon, as well as how Magikarp works, really makes me think that Razor Claw is going to be a great option for this Pokemon. Obviously, you're going to be auto-attacking after you use kind of any of these engage tools that Gyarados has. I'll talk more about items later, but every one of these moves really feels like it would be great for a Razor Claw. The upgrade of bounce is going to increase the shield it provides, and these can be some really chunky shields. We saw what Metagross was doing inside the game. It's going to be interesting to see how these shields look when they're actually brought into the main game. You never know how a Pokemon is going to release, but those are your big moves for Gyarados, except for one final move, which is without question the best thing in this Pokemon's kit, and it may be the reason that even if this Pokemon releases kinda it's still pretty dang good, and it's Unite move, because Gyarados' Unite move is awesome. The Unite move feels a little bit like Gengar's, but your opponents are going to see you. You dive underwater, you become untargetable and essentially invincible as you head towards your opponents. The longer you charge this up, the better effect happens when you burst out of the water. If you stay underwater for the second part of the bar, you're going to come up and create a whirlpool that slows your opponents, and you're going to do more damage than if you just kind of burst out of the water immediately. However, if you charge it all the way full and then burst out of the water, you're in that third part of the gauge, you kind of launch up in this amazing water typhoon and you knock your opponents up into the air for a full second. This could set up so many amazing opportunities in so many big fights. You'll just be able to chase someone down and do insane amounts of damage while also creating either a whirlpool that's going to slow them or a big knockup. It's just, oh, Gyarados' Unite move is really, really amazing. As always, we'll know more once we have the full stats and can really figure out what's going on with these Pokemon, but I think it's a good idea to talk a little bit about items and emblems and things like that. It feels like if you're playing the Dragon Breath build, you might lean more into making your auto attacks even crazier. Things like Rapid Fire Scarf, Muscle Band, Scope Lens could be really good options for this, as well as, of course, stacking your attack with things like an attack weight and a weakness policy. In general, all these items could be very solid for Gyarados in a ton of different ways. As I've said before, I think Razor Claw could be a great option for this Pokemon. Compared to Dragon Breath, I think Aqua Tail, you would be leaning probably more into stacking attack. So you would probably run something like Razor Claw, weakness policy, attack weight. You just want as much attack as possible so that when you use this move, you're doing insane damage. Now, one thing that's really interesting with Gyarados is that its shielding on its 2 dash moves is actually based off of max HP. So now we may be looking into a situation where stacking on this Pokemon, even double stacking for this Pokemon, is extremely advantageous. Also, it could get you out of Magikarp a lot faster. I'm wondering if we're going to see people really try to make goals happen early with Magikarp and stack up both an attack weight and an Aeos cookie for big shields and to give you the ability to survive longer in some of these fights. Now, let's talk about emblems. There's no question, if you're running a Pokemon like this, the preferred emblem setup is going to be 6 brown, 6 white. If you have Aerodactyl and Ho-Oh, you can make this set pretty easily, and it's going to give you the best chance of surviving and doing tons of damage inside these fights. It'll be interesting to see if anything else really makes its way, but I think until we get a new emblem set, which I'm thinking is going to happen on Pokemon Day, I think these are going to be the emblems you're going to want to run for a while here for essentially all of your attack-based Pokemon. Again, I cannot wait for this to hit Eos Island. I'm going to play so much Gyarados, even if it sucks. I don't care. I'm just really, really excited about this. And I will be making a video with the best way to evolve Magikarp as soon as it comes out and I get a real chance to sit down and figure out how to make this thing work as best as possible, especially after its early game kind of got nerfed. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited for this release? What else are you excited for in the future of Pokemon Unite? I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll see you all next time. We did it.